So I want to get right into part two of this interview with Scott Ritter and friends. Now, in this second part of this, Scott Ritter really gets into him and his two co-hosts get into a history of how and why, how Ukraine became or giving you an understanding of how they became the basically seat of Nazism in Europe, not Germany and Hitler. And so something people don't understand about what's going on. I think Ritter outlines it really well. He outlines how Nazism started in Ukraine, right? And it never ended and it spread from there to Germany. Excuse me. So it spread from Ukraine to Germany and to the United States, right? So basically, and then that's what gave rise to like Adolf Hitler, not the other way around. Like Adolf Hitler didn't spread Nazism to America and then to Ukraine. So let's get right into it.
End of summer, early fall of this year, and then you have to denazify. And the way you denazify, at least in Scott Ritter's world, is what they appear to be doing. They took General Surdovikin, the General Armageddon, who stabilized the front, and then the Russians then restructured the general staff to reflect the reality that this is a massive offensive they're getting to run on several fronts. And Surdovikin was given control of the air campaign, which means the air campaign is now a standalone campaign to do what? To destroy Ukraine as a modern nation state, to knock out its electrical grid, to take out its infrastructure, to collapse it as a society. Why? Why would you go that route? Because when you collapse Ukraine as a society, Zelensky becomes politically unviable. And the idea is to bring down the Zelensky regime internally, have the Ukrainians take care of this problem, and then to replace Zelensky with somebody who will accept the Russian terms of surrender. And one of those terms will be, of course, a new constitution that outlaws Banderism, makes Stepan Bandera the name that you cannot say.
Now you're talking.
Blow up the monuments, outlaw the political parties,
yes,
etc. This has to be a Ukrainian solution, not a Russian solution. Ukraine has to do this, but in order to do that, you have to bring down Zelensky. And when you collapse society to the point that Zelensky's out, society is going to turn on those who made this war possible, and that is the Banderists. That is Bandera supporters. That is the Sloboda Party. That is the right sector. That is.
And they've been the cancer in Ukraine for 100 years, these Ukrainian nationalists. Surely not all of the Ukrainian people are on board with what they do. They've been nothing but trouble.
Nothing but trouble. But again, I'm not saying that approach will ultimately succeed. I mean, the problem with ideology is how do you stamp out ideology?
Right.
And it's been there for a while in Western Ukraine. It's literally that is poison territory.
They were Nazis before there was a Nazi party in Germany. When you trace this back to World War I, those guys were already there and already had their Nazi beliefs before Nazi was even a word. Before there was
people. Bad people. So,
right.
Petlura days, I think they call them. This is the original founder of this movement of Ukrainian nationalism.
Right. Long before anyone ever heard of Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, they were doing this stuff. They were the white supremacists. They were the ultranationalists. They murdered people.
Yes,
so it's a Ukrainian solution. I can't guarantee that outcome. I don't think anybody can. It's a political problem that requires a long-term approach.
So, like she said, long before anybody ever heard of Adolf Hitler, right? There was before they had the word Nazi, there were these Ukrainians who were the originators of the Nazi movement, right? Before you even had a word for it, right? They had this movement based on the principles of Nazism, of modern Nazism, right? That they spread from Ukraine in America right, to Germany and other places all around the world. That's where you get like white supremacy from, right? And it didn't matter what their religion was. It didn't matter whether they was Jewish or Anglos, right? It was all the same. Or Hispanic, or whatever they're calling themselves now, right? And nowadays they even have some black ones, right? They even have they come in all colors. You see, they come in all colors now. They have diversity in the rainbow coalitions of Nazis now, right? Why? Because everybody wants to get in line for a slice of the devil's pie, as D'Angelo said in the song, right? Everybody want to get in line for a slice of the devil's pie. You see? The same way the slaves, some of the black people in Africa, right? They decided, well, I don't want to get killed by these white people that are invading and colonizing. I'll just help them sell. I'll just sell some of these other blacks to them, and they'll cut me in on the action. Better to do that than to get killed. It's the same attitude nowadays with the Charles Barkleys, right? The Nuri Martinez, right? The Barack Obamas. You see? Because Barack Obama was the one who started this shit in Ukraine in 2014. But Negroes got short memories. Joe Biden and Obama started this in 2014, not in 2022. It wasn't the Russians in 2022. Right? You see? See, they got smart. They figured, you know what I mean? They decided to play a different kind of game instead of the game Hitler was playing. So they said, listen, we're going to get rid of Hitler because he's coming in with this sledgehammer hitting these people over the head. And he's going to create a stampede that's going to take, you know what I mean? So we don't really have the numbers like that. So what we'll do is, right, we'll change our approach. So that's what caused the Anglos, right, to go against their own so-called brother in Adolf Hitler, right? We have to understand like how all this puzzle, you know, fits together. You see them? So you have to understand, why is Joe Biden, right, an American Confederate Nazi, Jim Crow Joe, right, a Jim Crow Nazi, Anglo-Nazi, why is he in Ukraine with the Zion Nazi Zelensky, right? And they say, well, these Jewish people can't be Nazis. Bullshit, they can't. The Jewish Zion Nazi, right, and the Anglo-Nazi have always been together throughout history, attacking black people. Judah P. Benjamin comes to mind. The second in charge of the Confederacy was a Jewish man, you see, who fled the United States when the Confederacy collapsed, right? Who owned slaves, right? Not to mention all throughout the Jewish Zion Nazi has always, and you know, they've always been involved with the Anglo and slavery and colonization. So when you see Jim Crow Joe Biden and the Zion Nazi Zelensky, you see, it's not, if you understand history, it's not a mystery. You see, it makes total sense why he's over there, why he's giving them 50 billion, why is Germany giving them tanks, why, you know, what's going on, right? You say, wait a minute, I thought these people were against, you know, you are confused and dumb, right? Black people voting for Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a card-carrying Nazi. He's in the home, he went home to visit the Nazi headquarters, which is Ukraine. Ukraine is the headquarters and the birthplace of all Nazis on the fucking planet. Do you understand what's happening? And they are reconstituting themselves for the final battle to take over the earth. That's what's going on, right? When you talk about this new world order. If people look at this and you can't make heads or tails of it, right? Because you got all these different groups. You got Joe Biden, This Jim Crow Nazi, right? Jim Crow Confederate KKK Nazi, right? And you got this Zio Nazi, Zelensky, so-called Jews, right? Then you got these Anglo Nazis from Europe, you know, that's underneath of Zelensky. All of those Nazis that they were talking about, the Banderites and all these groups, these original Nazi groups, before they even had a word for Nazi, right? Who are they under? Zelensky. Who is he? Well, he's Jewish. Oh, fuck. Oh, yeah. He's a Zio Nazi, right? Just like Judah P. Benjamin. You see? You got Sean Penn and all these people shoving this Zio Nazi down your throat. All these people in Hollywood. Either they don't know and they just useful idiots, or they know and they're just part of the propaganda machine. You see? Where it's leading up to a crescendo, right? And they're trying to all get on the same page now for the final solution. You see? So when you got to understand what's going on when you see Jim Crow Joe, Confederate KKK, Nazi Biden over there backslapping a Zio Nazi like Zelensky. You say, well, what's going on? He don't even care about the own people in the United States. In Ohio, they got a toxic, atomic bomb just went off. But Jim Crow Joe he's giving $50 billion to Ukraine, right? Why are they giving all this money to the Ukrainians? Why are they so interested in fighting Russia? Because Russia lost 27 million people fighting the Nazis, their brethren. But they always wanted to finish Russia off, because Russia didn't want to play. The Russians are certified Nazi killers, right? Are there probably some Russian Nazis? Of course. But for the most part, they're Nazi killers. You see? You know what I mean? Probably 95% of the population is probably Nazi killers. You had a few Nazis run over there in Russia, right? And so they got to get rid of them. They got to bring everybody on board. Why do you think they went after Saddam Hussein? They went after Palestine. They went after Syria. They went after Libya. Anybody who is not on board, you got to be brought down. You got to lick the boot and kiss the ring, right? And eventually, you're going to get deleted, because you're not part of the in group. You don't have the complexion for the protection. You see? That's the end game, right? I'm going to play a little bit more of this and then I'm going to wrap.
They at least will get Ukraine on the path towards denazification. And that has to be done without a Russian occupation. That has to be a Ukrainian solution. And that's going to take time. See, I think Russia is going to demilitarize Ukraine sometime in the August, October timeframe of this year. And I think that will also bring about probably a change in the government in Kiev. But the political solution is going to be longer, because if Russia dictates a solution to Ukraine at the point of a gun, the West isn't going to accept it. So what Russia's going to have to do is find a way to get the West to work with Russia to create a post-conflict Ukrainian government that isn't going to be, A, isn't going to be a cancer to Russia, but B, isn't going to be this economic black hole for Europe. So
you mean like we were supposed to do after World War II? Wasn't that what the United Nations in Nuremberg was supposed to be all about? And then somehow those Nazis just kind of got away, and they immigrated to Canada, and they came to the United States, and they went to South America. And I think we only prosecuted 22 at Nuremberg.
Not enough.
Yeah, not enough. Stalin did his best to hunt them down and try to get the last of them. But yeah, denazification is a bitch.
It's going to be a
we wouldn't be here today talking about fascism in the 21st century had we done it correctly back in 1945, 46, 47. But instead, Winston Churchill decides he wants to do Operation Unthinkable. Yeah. And he wants to stab his ally in the back, right, and invade the Soviet Union. And then he used, and the CIA here in the United States, starting around 1947, the very beginning of the agency, started cozying up to these Ukrainian nationalists, started cozying up to Stefan Bandera, who had a CIA code name. Yep. Nicola Lebed also had a CIA code name. Alan Dulles personally recruited Lebed, brought him to the United States, set him up in New York City, where he lived a long, happy life, despite the fact that he had a murder conviction as a war criminal. And the CIA protected him. We protected a lot of them. And that's how we got here today, because they were all useful during the Cold War, doing guerrilla warfare against the Soviet Union when we were trying to destroy it and do regime change. And we're just repurposing that same old plan. As far as, you know.
But the interesting thing is the CIA was assisted by an organization called the Gehlen Organization.
Yes, sir.
Which is a Nazi intelligence officer who operated the intelligence organization on the East Front against the Soviets, and had a huge network of stay-behind assets, many of whom were Banderas, Stepan Bandera's people. And so Gehlen, a Nazi who should have been prosecuted for war crimes and killed, instead became the head of the German intelligence service, working for the CIA, etc. And so people ask,
I'm gonna stop there right there. What he said was big, though. I gotta wrap this part. I'm gonna make part 3-ish, right? What he said was huge. If you didn't know, was fucking mind blowing. I don't know if you missed that. Where he talked, what he just said about how the CIA has basically a wing that's just Nazis. The whole branch of the CIA is just a bunch of Nazis, right? And they set up that whole thing with Nazis, right? During World War II. That's fucking mind blowing if you don't know, right? Where they was letting guys who was convicted war criminals who was murdering people, they was letting them go and giving them jobs in America and giving them nice apartments and cars and homes, right? And setting them, they set up they were setting up networks of Nazis in Ukraine. So in Ukraine, right? And you wonder why Joe Biden is in Ukraine hugging on Zelensky. Mind you, Joe Biden is a fucking Nazi, right? Is a known, KKK/Nazi member, right? He never hid that, right? So now it starts to, like they say, make it make sense. It starts to make sense, right? I don't make this too long. I'm gonna just do a part 3. But this shit is mind blowing, man. I'll do a part 3.